So, first things first. We need to have you state your name.
My name is Sally Lowy, formerly Queskin, and lived in Chicago, born in Chicago, and moved around a bit in the Chicago area, and moved to Florida in 1979, was there almost 30 years, and now made it full circle back to Chicago.
Back to Chicago. And what was the reason that you moved down to Florida, Grandma?
I moved down to Florida because your grandpa Charlie had a job there. Nothing was coming up in Chicago as far as employment. His company transferred him to Florida. I don't think my children were happy with my going to Florida, or are going to Florida. However, we go where the pay.
Your rebellious nature made you stray. Isn't that right?
My rebellious nature? I don't think I would be rebellious. I don't really. Maybe not enough. Possibly not enough in my lifetime. But that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
And what else can I say?
I want you to tell your story of how you met Grandpa.
My story of how I met Grandpa, we were friends with his father. His father would come in to visit with another couple.
Well, let's start with how his father ended up in Chicago.
His father was a refugee. He, fortunately, he came out of the Holocaust, survived that, due to Grandpa Charlie, who had him, was able to get him into the Dominican Republic where he was. And his father stayed there for a while and then moved to Chicago where he had friends. He moved in with these friends. We knew these people. And they would come over for coffee in an evening and bring him with. And he mentioned to me that he has a son in the Dominican Republic. And I kind of poo-pooed the whole idea, and I said, yes, that's very nice, and I went on to other things. And every time he came over, he said, I think you should write to my son, and he gave me his address, and I said, sure, and I put the address in a drawer, and I left that for a while. And finally, I said, okay, I would write to him, which I did. I wrote to him. In the meantime, to backtrack, I have had an uncle in South Africa. In our letters, he mentioned about my coming to visit him. I thought that was a good idea.
This was Grandpa mentioned in his letters that he wanted you to visit, or was this your uncle in South Africa?
No, my uncle in South Africa wanted me to come and visit.
Okay.
So I decided I would do that. I quit my job. I worked for the government at the time. Quit my job, intending to go to South Africa. And meanwhile, in correspondence with Grandpa Charlie, he said, before you get to Africa, come here and visit with me. And then you can go on, which I did. I traveled to the Dominican Republic where he was and wound up staying there for 6 weeks. We got married 2 weeks after I got there.
And was that Sosua?
The little village he lived in was Sosua, and for the most part, they were all refugees there. How they got there is another story.
So 2 weeks into your stay in Sosua,
2 weeks into my stay in the Dominican Republic, I got married.
What
was that?
I said you got locked up.
Locked up?
Locked up to Grandpa.
Locked up, right.
Right.
Locked up. And got married. And then I was there for a few more weeks before I came back. And then he came. I came back sometime in March of 48. And he came here July 4th of 48.
Independence Day. Now, let's just hold on a second because we pretty much blew through the 2 week getting to know period before the wedding.
Yes.
So let's go through that.
Oh, just
Because that was quick.
that's true. It was quick. But I don't know that I would have accepted that so well if my daughter or my son had come with a story like that.
Right.
I'm not so sure I wouldn't have locked them up and tied them to the bedpost.
Did you have any romantic intentions when you were writing letters when you got there?
No, no, it was just a friendship kind of thing. That's all.
All right.
He was a nice looking fellow. He was a good looking fellow, I would say. And for whatever reason, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And that's how it worked out. And that was February 14th that we got married. And I stayed there a few more weeks, and as I say, then I came back to Chicago, and he came on the 4th of July, which was a good day for somebody to get to this country.
And who was in attendance at the ceremony?
And just friends of his who were witness to this.
There were also Jews that escaped the Holocaust?
Jews that escaped the Holocaust went there because that country offered them the freedom that they didn't have before, and accepted them, whereas other countries did not. Other countries, at a meeting in 1939 in France, there was a meeting of representatives of many countries, and the Jewish question came up. What do we do about the Jews? And each one had a different reason for not accepting them. One wanted only engineers, the other one wanted only farm workers, somebody else wanted only medical personnel. There always were reasons why they couldn't accept them. So one little voice in this group spoke up and said, we will take them. Now they started with either 300 or 600 refugees that they took in to the country. It was barren land they gave them. They had to build barracks. They had to make a home for themselves out there. Most of the people they wanted were white males.
For what reason?
For what reason? To possibly whiten the population. So there were some that did intermarry between themselves and the Dominicans. And some of them stayed on, maybe till this day. They're quite elderly if they're still there.
And how long was Grandpa there?
He was there 8 years. He came there in 1940. And we went back for their 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
We had been back there once before. We were back there 2 or 3 times. And what else can I tell you?
Well, let's hear the best of your knowledge, the details of Grandpa saving a boy in shark-infested waters.
There was a day some man had gone out either for a swim or in a little boat. I can't recall all the details. And suddenly he found himself in the water and couldn't swim. And he started yelling for help, and people gathered all over on the hill, on this cliff, looking at him. Nobody seemed to be able to do anything. They were all frozen. And he jumped in, Grandpa jumped in, and swam out there and got him back.
Brought him back?
And he said to him, now don't try to help me. Just let me do the work. Don't try to help me do this. And he did. Now, I had heard that happened twice where he saved somebody.
Yeah.
I had heard that there was another incident. So for that, the people there gave him furniture, furnished a room for him.
Yeah.
Homemade furniture.
That's really nice.
But they did that for him. So.
Yeah.
And he was not a farm worker. He was not interested in that. He tried to sell. He tried to be a salesman. He went into the city to sell. I don't think that worked out. He worked in a factory where they made chocolate candies, or worked in that. He did a little textile there.
Yeah.
Which is what he had intended to do because that's what he was educated for. in textiles.
But he always wanted to be an engineer, right?
Always, I don't know if you know this, but when he came to this country, of course, he didn't have any credentials.
Right.
But he wrote to MIT, thinking that they might accept him. I
Right.
don't know, Of course, they didn't. He had nothing to offer. But he would have been very proud of his two grandsons who became engineers.
And probably the other ones too. Just
And
more
of course,
proud of us.
Of course. He was proud of all of them. He
Sure.
loved all of them. As you very well know, he enjoyed seeing you whenever you came to Florida.
He always had a good knack for speaking off the cuff.
Right. And even Uncle Sam said that he did marvelously when he got up on the bema and spoke at your bar mitzvahs. And this was off the cuff. He had nothing. I said to him, "Are you going to write anything down?" He said, "No, I don't have to do that."
Yeah.
So he got up there and spoke what was in his heart.
Well, he always told the truth, didn't he?
And I think that his grandchildren appreciated him for this.
Yeah.
And what else can I tell you? So now I'm back in Florida again. Did I say Florida? Erase that.
You did say that.
Erase that. Now I'm back in Illinois again.
If you can look out the back of your window, you would see snow, which you haven't seen out
Yes.
of your window for
Snow.
a really long time.
Snow here, and it is March. But I can recall an incident driving. It was March 30th in Illinois, and there was ice on the road, and I hit that ice, and I couldn't get off the ice. And there were wooden horses, so that you wouldn't drive on the ice. There were wooden horses, but my car kept hitting the wooden horses, and they were splintering in front of me. They were just going up. And so, and finally, in desperation, I did something that probably nobody should do. It was like 8 o'clock in the morning. People were on their way to work. It was a busy road. In desperation, not knowing what to do, I hit the brake, the emergency brake,
Right.
and the car skidded across the road, facing the oncoming traffic. I wound up on the shoulder of the road,
Yeah.
and I don't know how a car missed me with the traffic so heavy. A fellow behind me stopped. He said, "Lady, I expected you to be gone by now." So, anyway, somebody came by and got me out of there, and
And
I
you
was
made
a
it
little-
out unscathed.
a little. It was a bit of a traumatic experience. I can tell you that. But that was March 30th of that year. So snow now shouldn't surprise me.
Right. Well, it's nice to look at. You got a good view back there.
I know, but I won't try ice skating on it.
Not this season.
Not or any.
Or any season.
Already. So what can I tell you? I'm looking forward to meeting my two little boys, Charlie and Elliot. I want to see them soon. Have their daddy drive them over to visit me. That would be nice. And since, and they're going to be great boys. I'm sure they are already.
And just so we can get a time reference here, the year is 2008,
Yes,
and Elliot just turned 2,
right.
and Charlie is 3,
Going on 4
going on 4.
on May 31st.
That is correct.
Right.
That's
I
correct.
remember that. Grandma still has a good memory for numbers.
I was at a truck stop in Utah when Charlie was born.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I was very happy when they named him Charlie, too, since that was Grandpa's name. And he would have loved to have known him. Loved to have known him. And loved to watch him play soccer, because that was what Grandpa Charlie did, played soccer.
That's right.
He played goalie when he played soccer, whatever the goalie is, whatever he does.
That's right.
What-
Whatever that thing does.
Whatever the
he was
goalie
that
does,
thing.
that's what he did.
That's right.
And what else can I tell the world at large?
Well, I don't know.
It is now Easter Sunday,
Easter Sunday.
and I've been here back in Illinois about 5 weeks, still trying to get my house together in order. And my great-grandson, Todd, is taking his grandma out for dinner tonight. And I couldn't be happier. And I couldn't be happier with my grandchildren because I hear from them all the time. They are the best. They are the best.
The best in the world.
They had good upbringing. They had wonderful upbringing to know the right things to do.
That's right. And down the line. It all starts at the top.
Down the line, my children are great. Their children are great. That's all I can tell you. And that's the thing we were happy about. In good health. Always in good health.
That's right. All right. Well, that's a good start.
So are we?
We'll give
ready
a break.
For Hollywood? Ready for Hollywood?
Well,
now?
I think we're ready for Hollywood, but I don't know if Hollywood's ready for us. That's the big question. Yesterday was the first time I've ever used this video camera, so I'm trying to still figure out how to work it. But anyways, we were talking about your cousin Shirley Gintel.
Yeah.
And how I never contacted her when I lived in LA.
Right. Am I on now?
Now it's a go. It's rolling. So, but I did meet her granddaughter when I lived in New York.
Right, I remember.
And her name escapes me. It was something with a V, maybe.
Veronica?
Yes. It did not escape
Was
me.
it Veronica or she and the Shirley had a daughter which was Victoria. So hers was Veronica.
I think it was Veronica.
Yeah, right.
And she had just moved there shortly after I moved there to New York, to
Right.
Brooklyn,
Right.
to be more specific. And I went out with her once, and I think we may have had dinner and some drinks in Brooklyn. And I think after that, she maybe wanted to date.
Yeah. And you were not interested.
Well, I wasn't that interested. She's somewhat blood related.
Very distant blood related. I am a first cousin to her grandmother.
So if we would have...
So you're far removed. It doesn't matter now anymore.
That's true.
But you're far removed.
Well, now I'm even farther removed.
Now you're even further removed because you're in Chicago and she's in, where did she say she was? Out of town somewhere.
But we had dinner in Manhattan.
Right.
With Veronica. I had dinner with Veronica and with Shirley Gintel, your first cousin.
She's my first cousin.
And so that was the last time that I saw either one of them.
The last time, Shirley came through Chicago some years ago and I didn't see her. But back in 1943, I had vacation time coming. It was the middle of the war. And they lived in Burbank. And Shirley was about 19, I was 23. And I went out and they invited me to come and visit, and I stayed there 3 weeks, which was 2 weeks too long. People shouldn't stay that long with anybody. It's not the right thing to do.
Did you feel like you were intruding on them?
I did, because I didn't have enough sense, to tell you the truth. I never thought about it, but I realized as I matured that you don't do that.
Okay.
And as I have had company for 2 or 3 weeks, I'm really assured that it's not the right thing.
And did you let them know that they were there for 2 weeks too long?
No. They were very nice to me. They were very nice. But we went out one evening. Shirley was driving, and it was a foggy night, as you know they have.
Right.
In California. And we stopped at a light, and this man was crossing the street carrying a box which looked like a box of liquor. Head bent low, and he came over and peered into the car, and he said, "Hi, girls, how are you?" It was Bing Crosby.
Bing Crosby.
It was Bing Crosby. And he had just finished making Going My Way, which is a story of a priest. He was a big drunk.
Otherwise known as a...
A big drunk.
What's the new word you taught me today?
Shicker.
Shicker.
David learned that word today, and he's been repeating it ever since.
A shicker.
He likes that word.
Okay. So you saw Bing Crosby
So
in
Bing
Burbank.
Crosby peered into the window of the car. Yes, and Shirley and I, whenever we think about that day, we remind ourselves about Bing.
And you winked at him and invited him in the car to
Did nothing at
paint
all.
the town?
Kept on going.
All right.
Not interested.
Who knows? Maybe you guys, you young vixens, were the inspiration to maybe his later songs.
Sure, right. When he appeared earlier, before he made it to the movies, he had problems with not showing up for rehearsals because he'd been drinking.
Yeah.
So this was an old story with him. However, this is not a video about Bing Crosby.
That's true.
He's had enough publicity in his life.
That's right.
So what else can I tell you?
Let's hear about Little Jack Lowy and Little Kitty Lowy.
Jack Lowy was born June 2nd, 1949. Oh, and an interesting thing, that's just to remind me, we're fast forwarding here. When Jack was about 9 years old, Grandpa took him to sign him up for Hebrew classes. So the next day, I get a call from the school there.
Yeah.
Mrs. Lowy, your husband was in and registered your son. Yes, and see if we have these dates straight. He said you were married in 1949 and he was born in 1948. Now, of course, today, with today's world, they wouldn't even question that.
Well, hold on. Let's hear the implications.
Well, the point is that he had twisted it.
Yeah.
We were married in 48, but he was born in 49.
Because, Lord knows, he's not a bastard.
Absolutely not. None of my children are, or grandchildren are.
Okay.
Let's get that straight now. Straighten that out for the world.
Okay.
So, and 4 years later, Kitty was born in 1953, so that was great and enjoyable. I was telling them a story about Jack today. He was about 4 years old and had gone visiting, your dad will enjoy this, gone visiting a neighbor a couple doors away. And he came home and he said, I was over at Mrs. Kushel, and she said she doesn't know who I look like. And I said to her, I look like the milkman. And he said, she started laughing because, I'm sure she was laughing, because she doesn't know which milkman. We have so many that go through our alley every day. And then we had a young black fella that Grandpa brought home from work and was teaching this young kid construction, painting, papering. He had just come up from the South. This was the 1950s. And he felt that this young fellow was very awkward in the house. He wasn't accustomed to being with white people. And one day I said, Lee, sit down and have lunch with us. Well, he never had been invited to a white house to have lunch or anything of that sort. Well, I insisted, and he finally sat down very gingerly. And as soon as he sat down next to Jack, Jack said to him, Lee, you got to go wash your hands. The fellow's hands were dark, so he thought he should go and wash his hands. That was little Jack in all his glory.
He's always been very shy about saying what he feels.
Right.
He has trouble being candid, always.
Right. Anyway, my kids were great growing up, and they did grow up. So.
Did they play any sports when they were growing up?
No, not really. Jack played baseball, and I would go over and watch him. He used to play across the street, on somewhere on the school grounds. There was a school right near us in Skokie. And they both went to school there. It was very convenient.
Yeah.
And I remember one incident. He was about 12 years old, and he was playing ball, and he was up at bat, and he hit a home run. And I'm standing and watching this, and I got so excited I raced out and gave him a hug. You can imagine how embarrassed he was at that point. 12 years old.
Well, mother's got to show her support.
Mm-hmm. So, what else is there to say?
No, I don't know. We can
hold off until later.
We can cut.
We can cut till later.
We can cut and go get some. What's that?
How much do I owe you for the milk?
How much do you owe me for the milk?
Mm-hmm.
You owe me your life.
You're here because of my life.
Well, then we're
right?
even. Then you deserve that
right?
milk. That's right. It's my pleasure to buy you milk.
Thank you.
Here's your Denny's coupons. I don't need them,
I
so
don't
you can
need
have them.
them.
I think you're gonna love Denny's. You can send them to
You save
Rhoda.
this?
What's that?
You save these receipts?
I don't save them, but there's coupons on the back if you want to
No,
save
I
them.
don't need that. I need the bag. Need the bag.
All right.
All right.
So now we are in the kitchen.
Now we're in the kitchen. Are we set up?
We're rolling, Bob.
We're rolling. Here is our food. Not very formal.
Well,
Very formal, I'm afraid.
That's okay, because we have lemon squares for dessert.
Oh, we do? You managed to do that?
No.
I don't think so. All right, if you can open the salad, I would be most happy.
I will do that.
I would be a happy.
How about I'll get everything prepared. How about that?
Camper. Here are salad bowls. We will use these as salad bowls.
That sounds good to
Let
me.
me get this out here.
Mhm.
Get a couple of forks, a couple of knives. Where are all my knives?
I don't know.
You better use these.
All right. Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. What else do you need? Chips. Here's some chips. So this will be the first dinner that I've had in your new place in Vernon Hills.
Nobody else has been here for that.
See that? Another reason I'm on top.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on top. I'll just,
What are these kind?
they are Sun Chips, great multi-grain taste, all natural, original flavor.
Make me 20 years younger?
Huh? I don't.
Make me 20 years younger?
They can try.
Mm.
We'll see. We can assess the situation after.
And this is the first time
Do you eat?
we've had dinner
We have
as two adults.
that. We have.
Yeah, there's two adults.
Well, how does that make you feel?
That's me over there.
That's you. See that?
It's hard for me to see without my glasses.
Well,
Anyway, I'll
believe
see
me, it's you.
later.
It's nobody else.
I would be remiss if I did not mention, since I am here in Chicago,
Yeah.
the wonderful work my daughter and my son-in-law have done for me in these past 5 weeks. Every weekend, during the week, they've been great. They've been here constantly and on the phone. Wonderful.
They are good. They are great people.
Absolutely. Terry wasn't feeling well today, and he came out anyway and was repairing my headboard, which the movers ruined.
Were they anti-Semites?
We didn't go that far.
No. And who are your new neighbors going to be?
I've said hello.
No, your new family neighbors.
Oh. My granddaughter Alyssa and her husband have bought a house in the area, and hopefully I'll be seeing them a little more frequently.
Time will tell.
Mm-hmm.
They got a lot of tchotchkes over here waiting for them.
You're right.
As the only granddaughter,
Mm-hmm.
she gets first pick.
She gets first pick, right. Well, she's in a house. She'll be in a house.
Mm.
If my grandsons were to decide to stay in a house and stay in one place, I would see that they had some of these furnishings.
Why does owning a house give you some sort of permission to have your things?
Only if they don't decide to travel around.
Who's doing that? Andy? You just told me he's going to China.
Mm-hmm.
He just moved to California, about as far as he can get.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, Andy?
Yeah.
And David? He's a wanderer, huh?
Well, we don't know about David. Right now he's going to be in Chicago, as far as we know. And he may decide to get his own apartment one of these days,
Mm-hmm.
if he has a steady job, enough job. All right.
Well, right now he's working for the National Baseball League, Major League Baseball,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Sounds good to me, too. Well,
So is what you're trying to say is you're not coming to Alaska with me?
my grandchildren are all smart kids. I don't know where they got all this good sense. But somebody passed it down to them.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And your great-grandchildren?
I'm sure when I get to know them. Unfortunately, I'm too far geographically to see them often enough. And I'm hoping that now that I'm here, that Adam will drive down a couple times during the year. That would be nice.
I believe he
my
has
traveling-
plans to.
My traveling days, I think, are over.
Well, for those watching, we just had to borrow a step stool to get Grandma into my 4Runner, and then couldn't go eat at a restaurant because we couldn't keep the step stool because the receptionist needed it to put her feet on when she sat at the computer.
Watching Grandma get into his car. Unfortunately, we did not have candid camera around to watch this performance.
That's right. Let's see. I think that's good. All right, so let's hear about GT had
No,
5 husbands.
no, we're not going to discuss that. We're going to discuss my father and my mother got married in 1918, a week after the armistice was signed for the World War I. And I was born the following year, 1919, September 24th. And he, I don't know what he did in the early days, but eventually he wound up owning a tavern or two, and even during Prohibition, when they served the liquor in coffee cups, as though it was a restaurant.
And what neighborhood was that?
Humboldt Park. His taverns, he had taverns on Western near Potomac,
Mm-hmm.
and he had one on the other side of the streets.
Did they have names, or did they just?
I don't recall
beer?
I don't recall the names of them.
So when Prohibition started, and he owned a tavern.
Well, they had a restaurant
Oh, okay.
slash tavern,
Okay.
and so when somebody would come in for a drink, they couldn't, and they would look inside. You could see through the store window. The man would be drinking coffee, but it wasn't coffee; it was liquor.
And did this actually fool anybody?
Not too many people. He was my father was a very popular man in the neighborhood. They referred to him as Big Jake. And Big Jake, according to the population there, could do anything, fix anything. If a horse slipped on ice in the winter, they'd call Big Jake to come and help them. And so they ran him for an elected office. The junk peddlers were looking for a business agent.
What are
to
the
represent
who are the junk peddlers?
People that go out in wagons, horse and wagons, picking up junk and selling it to the junk yards.
Okay.
So they needed apparently some spokesperson for themselves. So he was very popular. Now, he was running against a gangster at that time who wanted that territory. And so the election was held somewhere outside of Chicago, and I can recall, I may have been 7, 8 years old, but I can recall some of this. It was in a park area. And my father won the election. So along with this winning the election, he was given a clock for his mantelpiece.
That's nice.
So my mother said to my dad, this Guinea, that was his name, or his short for whatever, he won't give me that clock unless I let him take me home. So my dad said, fine, let him take you home, but take the children with you in the car. He figured he's not going to do anything to her. He's got the kids in the car.
Wait, who wanted to take your mom home?
The gangster.
The gangster that your dad ran against,
Right.
beat,
Right.
asked if he could take your mother.
Drive her home.
Asked your father
Yes.
if he could take your mother home.
No, she asked my mother. He told my mother he'd like to take her home.
And your father said.
And my father said, fine, as long as you take the kids with you. So we all get plowed into this car, big touring car. And he put a police siren on all the way back to Humboldt Park. Nobody ever stopped him. I can still remember that. He had a police siren, this gangster.
Was the gangster friends with your father?
No, he wasn't friends of his. He wasn't a friend. But he was threatening him. He didn't want him in that office. He wanted him to give this office up. And he was threatening him. And Grandma Tilly, hard to believe, she said to this man who owned the junkyard, I remember his name was Morris Nabbit.
Okay.
I still remember that name.
All right.
Grandma has still got a few marbles.
You got a lot
Right.
of them. They're banging around in there.
She said to him, I want it. And this Guinea, this gangster owned a roadhouse, a little nightclub.
Yeah.
They called roadhouses out in the sticks somewhere. She says, I want you to take me there. I want to talk to that man. Grandma Tilly. So he tried to talk her out of it. She said, no, I want to talk to him. I'd like you to take me there. You know him, and I want to talk to him. So she went out there to this roadhouse to talk to this Guinea. And he invited her to sit down, and he was very wary of her. He said, you could have a gun in that purse for all I know. And he more or less said, you know, I could pull my handkerchief out of my pocket and you won't get out of this place. She told him she's not afraid of him, but she wanted him to leave her husband alone. He said, your husband must be a coward that he sends you. She said, my husband doesn't even know I'm here. Later on, he came into my dad's tavern with his henchman, and he said, around the drinks, and I'm toasting Mrs. Queskin. And my dad said, why would you do that? Toast my wife. Then he told him that she had been out to see him at his roadhouse. Can you believe this?
Wow.
Grandma Tilly.
So then, what developed from there?
Nothing developed. However, later in life, you know, I was just a kid at that time. When my father died, I was about 14. My brother was 10. So I certainly didn't know the whys and the wherefores and all that went on with underneath all these things. Somebody came in and started a fight or an argument with my dad at his tavern. And my dad turned around and this man hit him on the head with a bottle. And that blow to the head practically ended his life. Now, it could have been that this gangster sent somebody to deliberately do that. It's possible. And he was in the hospital, I don't know for how long. That happened in January of 1935, and he lived till April. He died in April 6th, 1935.
From the head injury?
Head injury. Couldn't do anything for him at that time. He was getting out, walking around with a cane, just to prove to everybody that he could still stand up, you know. But he had the biggest funeral that any politician had. There must have been almost 30 cars out there. He was extremely popular.
Big Jake.
Big Jake. And I think that I used to, when I was little, I think I referred to him as Papa Jake. I think I did that.
Yeah.
So that's the story with my dad, unfortunately. He was only 41
Young.
when he died. 41.
Wow.
Somewhere I've got a picture of him at the tavern with his customers.
I'd like to see it.
Once he didn't get home in time. Like, he used to get home 2, 3 in the morning. Grandma Tilly waited up for him, and she got very scared. She didn't know where he was at, so she finally, in desperation, called the captain of the police in Humboldt Park. And she told him, I'm Mrs. Queskin, I'm looking for my husband. He said, Mrs. Queskin, we raided that place tonight and arrested all those people. We told Jack to go home. He doesn't have to stay. But he said he insists that he's not leaving until these men leave, and they're down there singing in the jail. They're singing songs. But I told him to. He said, I told him to go home. He had an incident with one. In those days, the police used to walk the beat. You know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
So this policeman is walking back and forth, knowing that he's got his liquor in there. And he'd walk in, and my dad would give him a drink and send him on his way. When he came back, he would stop again for a drink. Well, he would do this all the time. Well, finally, he was getting annoying to the customers. My dad told him to leave. Well, he wouldn't leave. My dad threw him out of this restaurant, called the captain and said, get that man off my beat, which is what they did.
Yeah.
He said, send him somewhere else. I don't want him around here. So that was his influence at that time period.
Is that who my dad was named after?
Yes. So I always knew that if I had a boy, I would name it for my father. That's almost normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe that tradition is almost normal. I don't know if Little Jack was almost normal.
I thought this was about me now.
So now we have 10 minutes left of tape.
Yeah.
So can we hear the Al Capone story?
I don't know anything about Al Capone. All I know is that before I went to work for my uncle, now he had this, as I said, he had a cigar counter in the Creon Hotel, which was on 13th and Michigan, South Michigan. And when I came to work for him, before that, Al Capone had his offices in that hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, he moved to the Metropole, I think, on 22nd and Wabash, or Michigan, I forget which. But these men would come in all the time to the hotel. I got to know who they were. Very well dressed, very well dressed. There was also bookie running in the hotel. My uncle was part of that. And he had a man working at the doorman there. His name was Johnny Capra. He was Frank Capra's nephew. And he would have fit into one of Capra's movies. He was short and squat with a scar on his face and a limp. He looked like a gangster in the movies.
Maybe he was.
No, he wasn't. He was just working there at the door. But during the time that Capone was in that hotel, during the time he had his offices there, one of the men that worked for him came down wearing his golf outfit and carrying golf clubs in a bag. And he said to my uncle, "Do you mind if I keep this bag here for a while? I'm going out. I'll be back later." There were no golf clubs in that bag. There were guns in there, rifles, whatever, behind the counter. Those were the days of the 30s.
Yeah.
In Chicago. And those were the days when you could make a horse bet for 50 cents. And this Johnny would come up to me and say, "Let's play the horse we're going to play. Give me a quarter and I'll put up a quarter." Quarter was a lot of money to me in those days. And I was losing my money. And one day he said to me, "There's two Sally horses running. Let's play them in the double." I said, "No, I do not have any more quarters. I can't." Do you know what happened?
They won.
I would have collected $50.
Just goes to show.
$50 at that time was quite a lot of money
I bet.
to me. Anyway, to end this little theater, I want to say that I'd like to meet my two little great-grandchildren soon, and that I have had the best children and grandchildren anybody could ask for. My daughter, my son-in-law, wonderful, doing much for me. And my son when he can. And what else? And my grandson Todd is here now during this performance, helping me with this performance. And he's wonderful. It took me out for dinner tonight. And hopefully he'll come back and take me out again next month.
Next month.
We have a deal?
Yeah, you've only got a couple more months until I'm out of here.
Okay, we have a deal. Are you planning on still leaving for Alaska?
I'm going to Alaska and then down from there going to Argentina.
When is that?
That is at the beginning of June.
That soon?
That is very soon.
You've made all those arrangements?
Well, I figure I'm just going to hop in my truck and hit the gas and aim north.
Have you talked to your employer?
Not yet. I'll give them notice. I'll give them a month notice, I think. 26,000 miles, roughly.
And you're not going with anybody at all? You're by yourself?
Most of it'll be by myself.
Which I have to say I do not approve. But you've heard that before.
I've heard that before, and I respect your concern.
You've heard that before, probably from your mother, your father?
Well, my mother.
Your mother.
Yeah. But, you know what? Sometimes you just gotta go for it.
get it out of your system?
Well, I don't think anything's going to get it out of my system, but
What's alluring about Alaska?
whew, Alaska seems like it's. You were there,
Yeah, I was.
and did you like it?
It was very nice. I would have gone back and seen it. But we didn't have any pleasant days. There were no warm, sunny days. You want to catch that phone in there, please?
Yes.
You can bring it in here.
Where is
It's in there in the kitchen, right on the table.
Grandma Sally's apartment. Yes. Hey, how are you? You sound like you just.
They bought already. 2 weeks. She's going to be 2 blocks from Kitty. Well, Jack, I don't think thought highly of that, and Todd didn't think highly. The two of them laughed when I told them. They laughed at the. Jack laughed the other day when I told him, and when I told Todd today, he started laughing. I said, "You sound like your father now." I don't know what they're laughing at unless they think, well, this is not a good idea to be that close to your mother. I don't know. 20 minutes. So that's not bad. No, I'm in Vernon Hills. Well, there were a couple of others, but I'll keep that. That's right. He's got enough now. So I'm sorry that you're. No, we're all through. Aren't we through, Todd?
With what?
With the video.
Yeah, we've got 6 minutes left, so
we got 6 minutes left. He tells me. 6 minutes left. It's gonna wrap my life up in 6 minutes. Yeah, I gave him that story. I gave him the little tidbits of the gangster era. I told him the street. He's surprised that I have a memory for all these things. The arsenic. Oh yeah, I didn't give him that story. He'll have. I did tell him the story of Jack going over there one day, and he came home. He was about 4 years old, and he came home and he said, "Mrs. Kushel said she doesn't know who I look like." He said, "I told her I look like the milkman." So he said she started laughing. He said, "I know she was laughing. Why she was laughing? She doesn't know which milkman. We have so many that go through our alley." Well, people say when they say, "Gee, who does that child look like?" And you say he looks like the milkman, or it used to be that's right, or the laundry man, or something like that. So that's where he picked that up. And then one day I was telling him Charlie had brought home this young black kid and was teaching him painting and papering, and he had just come up from the South, so he was on. Being around white people was uncomfortable for him. And I invited him to sit down and have lunch. Well, he was, he just couldn't understand that. I finally had to coax him to sit at the table, and he was leery, and he sat down very gingerly. And Jack, who was about 4 years old, looked at him and he said, "Lee, you got to go wash your hands before you eat." Well, his hands were black. So he told to go and wash his hands. Oh my God, that's Jack. That was Jack. That's right. I always tell people I stopped telling him what to do after the age of 2. Yes, that's what I heard.